Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood, a season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, share with friends, and join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I am joined by Roz and Callie Picardo. How are you guys doing?
Good,
Great.
Stephen.
Thanks so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for making the time to be with us here on the podcast. I know we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but today the big topic is finances, which
Yeah.
I think I can hear an audible groan from the audience. And
Right.
Which is Roz's response. I love finances. I'm a
Yeah.
finance nerd. I just have so much fun with them.
So fun. Well, and I think this conversation is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. But before we jump into it, I would just love to get to know you guys. So where are you guys at? Who are you? Do you, family, all that fun stuff?
Go ahead, Roz.
Yeah. We have been married for almost 14 years, and we live in Dayton, Ohio. We've lived here the past 10 years, and we have 3 little girls, ages 7, 5. I'm trying to remember
And
them all.
3.
And 3. So that's why I'm blanking. And we're involved in, ministry. I'm a church planter, and Callie is in development work, and we've written a book together.
Yeah,
So
this is our second book together. This one's called Healthy Money, a 30-day journey toward spiritual, emotional, and financial freedom. I'm the child of a financial advisor, grandchild of financial, all my family are financial advisors. So I come by it honestly. I was a business major in college, went into investment banking out of college, and then found my way into charitable giving. Worked first for a Christian community foundation, and now I'm at United Theological Seminary, which prepares pastors and church leaders, and I'm their vice president for development. So I raise money for scholarships and fun things like that. But on the preaching team with Roz at Mosaic Church, and we love helping people be set free in this area of their finances so they can follow God's call wherever God calls them.
That's so cool. Was this an area, so she's like her genealogy is finance and all this. Was this kind of something that was like, oh yeah, this is me too, this is a uniting factor? Or what was your story with money?
Well, it's definitely a uniting factor in terms of we complement each other. And so, she ended up going to graduate from seminary, and I got my MBA. So it's like we rubbed off on each other, but I have no finance background, neither does my family. And so know the importance of it, but that was something that I was pretty much trying to avoid for most of my life in terms of figuring out how to budget and paying off student loans and, all that fun stuff. So I knew the importance of it, but I didn't prioritize it to the level I should have.
But then, Stephen, this is a fun story. Then that all changed when he asked me to marry him.
Yes.
I said, yes, but I did not do that when he actually proposed. But as we were getting ready to go through premarital counseling, I said, hey, finances are an important part of my walk with the Lord. It's not just a separate thing, but I want us to honor God with our finances as well. And since we're getting married, will you go through a financial Bible study with me? And so he said, sure. I was like, great, we're going to lead it, and we'll get others from the church to go through it too. And so about halfway through the Bible study, we took a 2-week break to get married and go on our honeymoon, and then finished it. But it helped us start our marriage on the same place with our finances based on God's word.
That's so cool. That's awesome. So even going back a little farther, did you guys, what was the setting in which you guys met? How did the two of you come together? I think it's just always a fun question to ask.
Yeah. So I was meeting with somebody in the marketing field that helps churches, and I was a church planter trying to figure out what I was going to do. And he introduced Callie and I because she was a mutual contact with him.
And we just had back-to-back business meetings. This guy was set up in Starbucks. all day long, meeting with people.
Okay.
Met in Starbucks, back-to-back business meetings with the same guy. He said, hey, here's Roz. He started a new church here, and we were in Lexington, Kentucky at the time. Here's Callie. She helps people with charitable giving. Realized we had some common friends. He got my business card, emailed me, said, hey, can we get together sometime for coffee? Which
Yeah.
I thought was a business meeting.
And I thought it was a date. So
about halfway through, I pulled out an informational folder and his jaw dropped. And I realized, oh, he doesn't have a ring on his finger. And I know not all pastors are married, but in my head, I just assumed he was, and he wasn't. But I was on work time. So I was not going on a date on work time. So he kept trying to say, well, what do you like to do for fun? And I was like, no, well, tell me more about the donors at your church and how we can help them.
And I'm thinking, we don't have donors yet. We're poor. So
that's amazing.
Less than a year later, we were married.
So eventually we got around to those conversations. That's awesome. No, that's so cool. What kind of caused you guys to write a devotional? Your devotional is Healthy Money. It's a 30-day journey, which I think is just amazing. But what kind of took you to that point? And also, within that too, I think you mentioned something, Callie, that's really cool. You said how your finances is not separate from your faith. And I think that kind of summarizes how you guys approach this, but I would love to hear what was kind of the starting point for this book, and then just faith, finances, and how that all ties together.
Yeah, I would say part of it is when I do premarital counseling with couples and you ask them, what was your experience with money growing up? You often hear two different responses. The context in which money was used, how it was used, and the relationship with money now. And so, what we discovered from that, and I always brought Callie into those discussions, and from pastoring, is people's relationship with money and maybe their indebtedness or, spending habits often occur because of a certain mindset that they have, instead of a lack of knowledge.
Yeah, we know so many people that know what they should do with their finances, but they don't do it. And they're not dumb people. Like they're very intelligent. They handle other areas of their lives well, but there's like a block. And when you get beneath the surface, when you figure out, okay, how am I wired? Okay, God didn't make me by mistake. Like I know God made me on purpose. What are the strengths of that can help me in the area of finances? What holds me back? And then what areas of my life might need some healing underneath? Like Roz said, maybe I had a childhood experience with money. Like maybe my family was always having debt collectors at the door. Like that is gonna form me. Or maybe I grew up around a lot of wealth and like that became very much there was identity wrapped up in that. Right. And that formed me without me even realizing. But when you start to peel away some of those layers, not on your own, but with God, kind of going deeper, but asking, okay, God, please help me with this. Like I want to go there, but I don't want to go there on my own. There's some healing work that God can do by the power of the Holy Spirit. And we think that happens over time. So by having as a devotional with some space for reflection, questions, journaling, but also praying, bringing in some maybe spiritual disciplines as well. Like, hey, maybe you start adding in some spontaneous giving that is part of your journey with God, something fun to help break just some cycles that have gotten internal. God can lead you to a different place. But it starts with just one step. We have a lot of friends in recovery. Recovery ministry is a big part of our church, and it's one day at a time.
Yep.
And our hope is that people pick this up because of their finances, but with doing the work with God, so much more changes. Like it impacts their spiritual walk with the Lord. It impacts them emotionally, relationally, and in all areas of their life as well.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think even if I look at my own journey, I grew up in a very giving was the norm. Giving we had the envelopes, and it was kind of part of the Sunday routine. And once a year, we would go to the church office, and they would get their whole year's worth of envelopes and and all that stuff. But for me, like I grew up very tight-fisted. So like my family was very generous. This is very normal for them. And I would like crumple my money and, make it look like I had more than I did when I gave. And I would like look at my dad to make sure he saw me give, but it was very like self-centered, and it was very for the wrong reasons. And it's taken a long time to kind of navigate. What is that about? Like, why and how much of that has come into adulthood and addressed that and given that to the Lord. And so when you guys talk about money mindsets, the devotional kind of covers 5 primary money mindsets. Can you just break those down? And I know the listeners are going to be hearing these and going, oh yes, that is me. That is my parents, or that's my spouse, or whatever the case is.
And that's the hope. That's the hope that you'll think about you, but also figure out, okay, the people that I'm in relationship with, especially if you're doing finances together, okay, here's how they're wired and here's how we can wire together. So
Yep.
For me, I'm security mindset's my main one. And sometimes you're a combination of two. Like my second one's probably a benevolence mindset, but the security mindset is one that really like wants things stable, steady. Like I'm a firstborn rule follower. So like that, it kind of, it's like, I'm really good at saving. I don't like to spend, like, unless I really have to. I don't mind spending on groceries, but I get anxiety over big purchases sometimes. But if I'm in a healthy place with my mindset, like I work toward goals, but I also don't let the amount of money in the bank account define me. Like I want God to define me and God to be the source of my security, not how much is in the bank account. But it helps with saving, and it helps me with planning and working toward financial goals. So with each of these, there's like a positive side, and we want people to go toward the healthy, but there are also some things that you can watch for. So for me, it's that control. I don't want to get into that trap of feeling like I have to control, or that trap of having to like hold things too tightly.
Okay.
You're more of a carpe diem.
Carpe diem. Yeah, I'm a mix. So
okay. So the first one is security.
Yeah.
Second one is carpe diem. Is that?
Yeah, I'm more spontaneous when it comes to purchase. And not that don't throw caution to the wind and just go crazy, but I'm more spontaneous when it comes to spending. Most of the time, it's not material things, it's giving. So Callie likes to be planned in our giving. And when I see a need, I'm just like, let's do it. We have it, let's do it. But then what I've discovered is that often cheats other people out of the blessing of stepping up as well. Or I get the savior complex where, I do this. And it's kind of, it could be wasteful too, because, hey, my 7-year-old daughter for her birthday on St. Patrick's Day doesn't need a St. Patrick shirt. That would cost me $20
that she might not ever wear,
but I think it's cool. And I want to, add that onto her list, that's just
amazing.
Budgeted and like got her gifts, like, so you can see the mindsets at work, kind of the balance.
Yes.
So we've got the security, the carpe diem. The carpe diem sometimes also is more experience driven. Like they love to like go on trips and do the amusement parks and the experiences and the going out to eat, and like they just like to enjoy life. Carpe diem means seize the day. I mean, it's there's that one. The benevolence is the one that's really generous, but you want to make sure it's not going to the point of enabling, not to the point where it's kind of a codependent relationship where you're like always fixing something for someone else, like where you're always like bailing this other person out because you don't want them to struggle. You love them, you're helping them, and you're not taking care of your own needs, and you're not saving for the future. Right. Like there's the balance of each of these. The fourth one is a collector mindset. That you might be that type of person that just, you love a collection, whether it's antiques, it's cars, it's little action figures that you're like always finding out, and you love having that collection. The challenge with that is finding identity in stuff. But the benefit with that is you're often in this field you're often in this field with people that have a similar passion, that have a similar thing that they love, and it's this opportunity to share Christ. Like it gives you this platform and ability to connect with others, and ultimately the pearl of greatest price, is the faith is compared. And so there's a good way of collecting as well. And then the final one is a laissez-faire mindset, where it's very hands off, like go with the flow. Whatever comes. The positive version of this is, what Apostle Paul says, I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances, with a lot or with a little. The negative is when you're doing it more out of self-sabotaging, like, I'm never going to get out of debt. I'm never going to get ahead. So why try? Why bother?
Yes.
It's a balance.
So one is not better than the other. And that's where people often think, it is a blend, but there's probably a predominant one that we often go to in our minds. So each one has, like Callie said, has very positive strengths. And then there's the shadow side of each of the mindsets.
And the hope is when you know your mindset, you can harvest the strengths of that to accomplish financial goals and to grow in your faith in that area. And when you know the weaknesses of it, you can figure out, okay, I know I tend toward that. I'm going into this situation where this is going to be a struggle for me. How am I going to address it? What, am I getting accountability for this? How are we working through this?
Right. And I think you guys have a tool. If somebody's kind of like, I think I fall in a few of these, how can we get that tool to help us identify our money mindset?
We'll share the link with you, Stephen, so you can add into the show notes. But yeah, it's a great tool. It's a quick little online assessment, and they'll email you the results. And I think they're also sending a 10% discount code for the book as well with that. So if you want to, if you're interested in the book and interested in the assessment, just know that take the assessment first, and then you should get a 10% off code for the book.
Amazing. No, I love that. And I think, for me, or even any strengths in our life, for me, if I've done the strengths finder test, I don't know if you guys have.
Oh yeah.
And one of mine is woo, which is kind of winning others over. But the shadow side is I do great with first impressions, but sometimes to build those deeper relationships comes with a lot more effort. And, I realized, like, once I did it, I was like, oh man, I can totally see this now. But until that point, I was kind of riding the strength, but kind of neglecting that weakness side of it. And I think that's a big part of this. And so what's kind of the next step? So if somebody is kind of like, okay, I think I've kind of identified the mindset. When it comes to those next steps, whether it's budgeting and some of those things, what's kind of the practical advice you kind of give to people? And I'm going off of assumption. I think everybody's in different places. But I think something that your devotional kind of covers really well, and you guys mentioned it earlier, is a lot of us know kind of the basics of what to do, have a budget and all these things, but we still find it very difficult to do it. And we find ourselves not doing it in the end. So just kind of help us get started with some of those things.
Yeah. Stephen, do you mind me asking, as we share the mindsets, which one, any one or two of those that sound like you, and then we could maybe use you as a case and say, hey, here's some things that you might want to do.
Well, okay. I feel like maybe I'll kind of share some of my own habits and you guys can help me here. Cause I feel like I get really in the security in the side of, like, I want to make sure we're good. But I'm a free spender within kind of the limit. So, like, I love being able to do sporting events. I love being able to take the kids out for ice cream, and I don't want to think about it. Like, I just want to be able to do it. So I'm very spontaneous when it comes to those things. But then on the back side of things, I look at the bank account, I'm like, oh no, and for the longest time, I had to get over this, but for the longest time, I would kind of, especially in college, early in college, like, dictate my giving based on where I was at with finances, like that consistent giving. But when it comes to something random, I'm like, oh yeah, great. Like the spontaneous response giving. And so sometimes when I look at my giving, it's like very spontaneous. And then I struggle on the other side of that. So that's kind of, I feel like, an overview. Like, I love buying gifts, and I kind of find out later how much I spent on them. I love taking friends, meeting a friend for coffee, and I'm standing in line going like, buy your own. Hey, I'm going to buy yours. and I love being able to treat people like that. But then I'm like walking away going like, why did I do that?
Right.
So that's a good scenario of me. Yeah. So where am I at, and help me? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm hearing a lot of the carpe diem probably is like kind of the predominant, but also kind of some of the benevolence and maybe security kind of underneath there, maybe benevolence next. And I'll be curious if you take the assessment where you do.
I for sure will. Yeah.
But then, so I would just say, figure out what are your big financial goals, and just build those into the budget first. So if you want giving to be something that, you're giving a certain percent every month, build that in first. If you want savings to be something you're saving a certain percentage, go ahead and build that in. And then make sure those things are happening first. But then, do what you're doing, like have a budget for the spontaneous. This actually saved us a lot of marriage fights because Roz and I, our biggest fights early on, honestly, were over giving, which seems crazy, but we both love to give, but I'm the planner and the budgeter, and then he'd like spontaneously give and break the budget. So we started budgeting for spontaneous giving, which sounds counterintuitive, but when you have a budget for the spontaneous, then you have freedom to be spontaneous. Like that's such a beautiful part of your personality, Stephen, that you would just be like, hey, I'm going to treat you. Or, hey, here's a gift. Or, hey, let's go to a sporting event. Do it, but like have a budget for it. So then you don't feel stressed or like you're ruining your other goals.
Right.
Because you've built in money for that.
No, that's good. I feel like that definitely like hits it. And I feel like the other part of it too is I think sometimes when we get stressed, I'm the type, and this goes back to like middle school, like out of sight, out of mind. I don't even want to look at the bank account. Like if I think it's getting lower, that was kind of my go-to, like in college was like, I'm not even going to look. And then my mom calls me and be like, hey, you have an overcharge. And I'm like, oh, do I? And it was kind of like avoid the pain. And that's something that we've had to kind of address with this, over the last, I've been married almost 9 years. And so that's been like a big focus for us is, let's have a better tab on things. But I think that's been a struggle for sure.
Yeah, we know a person that whenever a tragedy or something comes up in their life, they end up spending to compensate for the way they're feeling or to deal with that trauma or hurt. And so they keep getting themselves in a spiral with that.
And so both of what y'all named kind of goes to that underlying emotional side with finances, whether it's something happens and so spending is a soothing thing, or whether it's avoiding something that seems scary, like, oh my goodness, my balance might be low. I'm afraid of that, so I'm going to push away. Being able to name some of those fears. And then that's part of this devotional. It's figuring out, okay, what am I afraid of? What are my biggest fears when it comes to finance? Okay, but what do I believe about God? What do I believe God's calling me to do this? If it's not just Callie handling these finances or Callie and Roz together doing it, but God is guiding us. Okay, God, I'm right now afraid because I don't know how much is in my account, but I want to be a good steward. Help me to do this better, and so it's not, it's naming those fears so then you can take them to God and ask God for wisdom on what to do. And they're practical things you can do with it, like building an emergency fund. So there's a cushion that you're not touching, but in an emergency, if it gets low, you've got, and so there's a little bit of cushion. But even with that, it's not trusting that. It's saying, okay, God, I want to trust you more than my finances. I want to put you first. And I know that you are there with me. If I'm out of money, like God, even if I'm out of money, I'm rich because I've got you with me. But God, I want to steward this well. So will you help me?
I think that's a powerful aspect of this. And we've had a couple of different people on the podcast that are Christians in the finance world, but this is one where it's like, no, let's integrate it together more so. And I think that's really healthy. Like, I think, because there's that side of me even that just says, okay, if this is an area of struggle, what can I practically do? And I think those are good, obviously, steps. But sometimes it's easy to neglect the spiritual side of that and like going to God and really questioning, like, do I trust you? Like, am I confident that you'll come through? And I'm a big journaler. And so the more I review those journals, I was just going through one the other day. I was looking for something in particular, and it was from like 7 years ago. And I kind of remembered the time frame of when I was going through this thing. And I was just going through it. And I found one that said, like, God is so good. We were short this much, and this is what was given.
Oh, that's cool.
I was a missionary for 6 years, a campus missionary to a college campus. And so it was fundraising and support raising and all of that stuff. And 1 month it was like $1,200 more than the normal. And it was pretty consistent, but one donor just felt like, hey, I want to give a gift. And that was like the exact amount that we were short on. And we've just seen that. Like, I got emotional thinking of that. Like, and here I am questioning, like, oh, come on, like, this is so hard. This is so hard. And just rebuilding that faith of like, it may be hard now, and there are practical things that we need to do, but God has never failed us before. He's always come through. And I think that's just like a beautiful thing that you guys have integrated within this.
Well, you have to have extreme faith, Stephen, be able to raise support. Anybody that's done that knows how difficult it is. And think about the example that you could be for, this generation that's coming up that is not the church of tomorrow, but actually the church of today. And the demographics of the church are changing drastically. And so what does it mean to lead in all areas of your life?
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's some folks that end up in this prosperity gospel type mindset where they feel like if I'm following God, I should have a lot of money.
Right.
Like that,
it's a contract
to be
theology.
wealthy means I'm a good Christian. And then there are other people that have more of a poverty gospel mindset of saying, I can't have money, like therefore I must not be following God. And you all were at a spot where you got to see the beauty of God provide because God had called you to this ministry. You were stepping out in faith, but you were also praying and trusting God for provision. And so you get to see miracles, Stephen. They're like the provision. And it wasn't because like having a lot of money didn't mean you were better. Like, no, the big thing is you were following God. And that's a big wisdom for all of us. Like, no matter how much or how little you are, how are you following God with your finances and trusting God more than your finances, but letting God have access to everything in the bank account, plus the stuff. I mean, if you got a home, your car, like how is God able to use those things for God's kingdom?
Yeah. Can you actually speak to that a little bit more? Because I think one thing I hear a lot of young people say, and I've said it too, is once I get to this point, then I will blank.
Then I'll start.
Then I'll give, then I'll, then I'll take, then we'll budget differently, then we'll save for retirement, or then we'll, like even some of those practical things of, that kept my wife and I from taking like our children's college education, even starting, because we felt like we needed to get to a point before we started, and we were debt free, we were saving for a house, all those things. And it was kind of like a friend of ours was just like, what if you just started with $100 a month? And then when you can grow from that, but just start today. And obviously the compound interest and all that stuff. But I think that mindset of like, once I get to that point, and for a lot of people, they get to that point and they're spending, their habits are what will already take them to the next level. So they go, I have $100,000 more annually than I did, but I'm still at the same point at the end of each month. Like, what's going on? And then how to rework that to like see, like you were saying, your car, your house, your finances, and how those are God's, and how we can use those to build His kingdom. Because I think those are tied together, right?
Yeah, they are. And it's very much, like you said, it's starting because there's that positive momentum. And it is honestly, if you're, especially with giving, if you're trying to give a percentage, it's a lot easier to give $10 once you've made $100 off versus $1,000 off of $10,000. That seems bigger. But if you started that percentage-based giving, and the Bible talks about tithing, but also there's also grace. And so, our big thing is, where are you today? Start somewhere. If you can't be at 10% today because you just can't figure it out, start somewhere, pick a percentage. Maybe you're at 5% today, and next year you get to 6%, and next year you get to 7%. All of a sudden, a couple of years later, you're like, oh, I'm giving 10%. And then you're like, but I'm used to increasing a percentage every year, so why not go 11? Right. And just let God stretch you and grow you, and see where it might go. But it's better to go ahead and start. And then we've also seen people have a plan for their finances that come in regularly, and start that, but then have a plan for any spontaneous money that comes in. So, maybe they get a tax refund and they're like, if I get money back on taxes, here's what I'm going to do with it. And some people are like, I'm going to buy a new car when I get a tax refund. The car dealers are all advertised. But maybe it's like, no, if I get a tax refund, I'm going to put all of that toward kids' education, toward my retirement, toward paying off debt, whatever that financial goal is that you want to reach. Maybe you have a plan for that spontaneous income that comes.
That's good. I think, we're coming up on tax season as we're recording this, and a lot of people are getting refunds, or that's kind of like the thing. And I was the type of person, like when I bought college textbooks, I would buy them for like $150 and I would sell them for 20. I was like, yeah, 20 bucks. But I think that is something that's really, really powerful, is having a plan, for our money in general, but then those kind of one-off things that usually go towards something random that's hot on your brain. It's like, oh, I just saw that TV for sale. Let's get it. I have the money for it.
Right.
The discipline of that is real. And so that's good.
If you think about it in advance, if you have a plan ahead of time, then you're more likely to be intentional with it.
And it's easy to get overwhelmed with any kind of quote unquote financial program or anything you do. You go to a conference and you hear something about fitness, and then you think, well, now I got to work out 7 days a week, and I got to do. I always tell folk, think big but start small, because if you have the 100 things on your mind that you feel like you have to do, you won't do any of them. Mm-hmm. But what's the one thing you can implement today and do that? So make, in recovery, we talk about it's progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. So it's just that one step in front of the other.
And that's why we wrote the book as a 30-day journey. If I'm making a plan that I have to stick with for 20 years, that sounds overwhelming. But if I'm doing something for 30 days and it's guiding me through one at a time, and then I'm doing it with God and I'm letting God lead me to one of the things, we intentionally, there are a lot of how-to books out there.
Yeah.
We did not write another how-to book. That's been done. This is a journey with God. It's going to lead you to some ideas and suggestions, but ultimately you and God are on a journey, and we want you to say yes to God, whatever that looks like, but it's going to look different for you than it does for me or for Roz or for Stephen. We want you to do what God's calling you to do, and we want you to ultimately experience that growth in your own faith and that financial freedom that really comes from God, not from the amount of money in your bank account.
That's so good. I know for us on this podcast, the name Going Somewhere is kind of a play on the season of life of like, we're all going somewhere. We just don't always know where we're going, where this is all going to lead us to. And I think the thing that there was another name of the podcast that we played around with before we started. It was just called the One Small Step Podcast. And because the idea of it is one small step. And so to take one next step, I know our listeners today are already thinking of that. And my encouragement, and I just met Roz and Callie, but just in everything that I've seen of this devotional, and I'm really excited about it. And I think it's going to be really helpful. I think that's a great next step, is to take 30 days by the devotional, go through this. I know this is kind of a silly question, but what's the guarantee that they'll get out of it? Because I know it's going to be different for everybody. But if I sit down with this devotional for 30 days, what's your guys' hope? Like, what's your dream for every listener or for every reader of the devotional?
I think it's that taking one step with God, like letting God lead you and being a step further at the end of 30 days than you are today. I mean, we know it actually uses that journey metaphor, and at the risk of spoiling the end, at the end, there's kind of that, just that note of, if you've ever seen the old movie Homeward Bound with the two dogs and the cat, that they're trying to make their way home, and they keep saying it's home's just over this mountain, and they get up to the top of the mountain, they realize, oh, there are more mountains to come. Like, the hope is, as you get to the top of the mountain, you can stop and celebrate at the end of 30 days, looking back, look what God's done in 30 days. And I know I've got more mountains to climb, but I'm going to stop and celebrate that I have climbed this one. I have spent 30 days with God, looking at my finances and surrendering them to God and taking some steps forward. And I'm just going to stop and celebrate. And then I'll take that next step with God tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think also it's growing in your own self-awareness. What are some patterns that you have, but you might not be aware of, the why, or, how it makes you feel or others feel. So I think it's digging under the surface with that time of introspection that you otherwise wouldn't have by if you didn't pick up the book.
Yeah, that's that again, going back to that progress, not perfection that we so often hear in recovery. It's just, at the end of 30 days once you have that awareness, you can start to make progress.
Mhm.
You're probably still going to have the same pitfalls
Yeah.
and challenges that you had at the beginning of 30 days, but
They won't go away.
They're not going to go away, but you're going to be more aware of them and making healthier decisions
Mhm.
because of that awareness.
That's awesome. I love that. The progress over perfection. Even in giving, I think sometimes the church will preach, tithe, and then the person's never given before. And
Yeah.
we don't preach,
Yeah.
all right, now go into full-time ministry day one. We help them grow. Like there's some things that need to die, and we don't expect those
Sure.
to die off in an hour, and so
Right.
I think money, sometimes we treat it differently with that. And the
Mhm.
person that's listening today that has $60,000 of student debt, that's a big mountain.
Yes.
But when you think 30 days and you think a small step, it becomes a little less daunting, to know
Right.
that there's a big, like you said, Roz, like there's a big goal, but let's think small. And I just love that. And I love your guys' heart. Like I love the pastoring just comes out of everything you're saying, and just your heart for people. It's just so evident. And I just really appreciate that, because I think that's where sometimes like information on money is fast. If you're
Mhm.
on Instagram or on TikTok, like there's a lot of content about finances right
Yes.
now, a lot of ideas of what to do with money, but that heart set and what God wants to do in us and through us, you guys have hit the nail on the head of like, this is what the issue is. Like, this is the heart of this. So I just appreciate that. And one of the questions I ask every guest, and I always get excited to hear what people say. But if you were to face off with 22-year-old version of yourself, what's one piece of advice that you would give them, and why?
Do you want to go first?
I think it would be to listen to people who are older than me, where perhaps they are where I wanted to be. And so that more of that teachability, more of that listening to folks that were just, ahead of me on the journey, and not just tune them out automatically because I think they're lame, or, trying to ruin my fun or anything like that.
That's good. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of things as a parent, even, that I've looked at my parents. I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like you telling me to be safe every time I drive. I get it now, so that's good. I love that. How about you, Callie?
I would say to my 22-year-old self, you don't have to figure it all out today. I think I was so worried that with each decision, if I made it wrong, it was going to ruin the entire trajectory of my life.
Mm.
And what I've learned is I just need to trust God. And if I feel like God's leading me to say yes to something, say yes.
Mhm.
And if I feel like God's leading me to say no to something, there's power in that no, because that gets me ready for what's next. And one of the craziest things I did when I was in late 20s or right around 30, we moved from Lexington to Dayton, Ohio. And I feel like the Lord was leading me to step out of full-time paid work for a while, which I was like, I don't know people who do this, who don't have like a family member to care for, or kids, or some reason why they're doing it. But I really felt the Lord's leading. And I got to basically have a year of mini retirement when I was 30. And basically I volunteered at the church. I was like on staff without getting paid. I did some contract work. But then when the job came up that I was supposed to step into a year later, I was available. The timing was right. I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. It didn't make any sense. I kept trying to explain to God, gaps on resumes are a bad thing. And God kept telling me, Callie, remember, I'm God. I'm like, oh, right. And so I would just say, don't worry about your entire future. Just say yes or no to where God's leading you today. And God's brought me to a completely different place today than I would have ever picked at age 22, and I wouldn't change a thing.
That's so good. I love that. I love that so much. There's that yes to the next thing is just such a powerful way to live, because especially as young adults, we think of the next 40 years, and with money, it's like, well, I want to retire when I'm 60. Like we're already thinking about that, or that's what we're told to think about. And so that's so helpful. Is there anything final for, as we kind of close this, that you guys want to share just with the audience? And also, how can we'll obviously have everything in the show notes, but where can we get the book, and how can we follow along with you guys and connect with you guys in other ways?
Yeah, you can pick up the book anywhere where books are sold. Of course, Amazon or Invite Resources. You can go ahead and just put in Healthy Money and our last name, Picardo. It'll pop up, or contact us. RosarioPicardo.com is another way. That's our website, and search for us on socials as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, you guys, just for taking some time to be with us. And I know our audience is going to be blessed by you and just your ministry. This isn't just something that you guys do. It's your life and what God's called you to. And so thanks for being obedient to that call and being a voice, not only for this generation. I know it's not just for young adults, but for people that want to do this and honor God with this. So I appreciate you guys a ton. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having us.